Picture this, 21 years have flown by, more than 2 decades brimming with treasured memories. This incredible woman, my high school sweetheart, has been my rock through it all. I can still vividly recall passing her secret notes during biology and the butterflies in my stomach when I finally asked her to the prom. She was the cheerleader who lit up every room, her dimples making my heart skip a beat with every smile. Today she has become not just my school sweetheart, she has become my wife. At least she was until recently. In the meantime, I have gone through significant changes. From an ordinary Joe in a small, dusty town, I turned into a corporate lawyer, constantly wearing a strict suit and briefcase. This may seem like a radical change, but don't be fooled. Under this polished exterior, the same person is hiding. I really like to enjoy burgers dripping with sauce and savor perfectly chilled beer. In our humble abode, we have created a home. Let it not be a luxurious modern mansion, but rather an old and cozy dwelling located in the very center of our city. With its quirks and creaking floorboards, every crack and crevice in these walls keeps a unique story. Every corner of this house holds cherished memories. It was in these walls that I skinned my knees when I was learning to ride a bike and quietly drank my first beer. This place is of great importance to us, as it passed to us from my late father, who left this world many years ago. This house is not just a building made of brick and wood, but a tangible connection with our past, evidence of our deep heritage. And now, as we celebrate 21 years of married life, it serves as a constant reminder of the path we have traveled together. In a cozy old house in a small town lives a couple who were in love at school. At first glance, this is the perfect backdrop for a soulful fairy tale, a story radiating warmth and happiness, the perfect life that every couple dreams of. But let me express a different point of view. The path we were following took an unexpected turn, far from those roses and sunlight that once adorned our relationship. The descent was swift, like a skier racing down a snow-covered slope. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This story will be revealed later. As for the current moment, on a normal Sunday, I was comfortably ensconced in my favorite old armchair. With a cold beer in my hand and a game on TV, I just went about my business enjoying the tranquility. At that moment, my wife entered the room, in whose expression, in contrast to her usual demeanor, there was a hint of seriousness. When she sat down next to me, I felt that she was up to something important. Her voice trembled at first, but gradually got stronger, and she began to speak. What she shared with me was, to put it mildly, unexpected. She stated her desire to have an open marriage in which we could seek connections with other people while remaining faithful to our marriage. I apologize for the expression, but I was shocked by her words. My brain was spinning, trying to make sense of her unexpected statement. My wife, who has always seemed reserved, has now expressed a desire for us to strive for relationships with other people. She wanted to learn something new, to try something different. I was speechless, trying to make sense of her point of view. Wasn't our life together fulfilling? We have created a cozy home filled with dear memories and experiences, sitting in an armchair without a beer and not paying attention to the sounds from the TV. I couldn't help but think about what else I could discover besides what we already had. It was clear that she was determined to adhere to the concept of an open marriage, and this is not a fleeting, but a well-thought-out idea. How did we get to this? What subtle signs did I not notice? I felt completely blind, as if an icy downpour had suddenly hit me on a winter day. Thinking about the upcoming vacation, I suddenly faced an unthinkable situation. My wife, a man with whom I had lived for 21 years, building my life, now demanded relationships with other men. The weight of her words hung in the air, and I lost the power of speech and the feeling of uncertainty. This new reality, which I never expected to see, took me by surprise when I looked at the woman who had been my companion for so long. At that moment, I was visited by an unexpected realization that I really don't know her as deeply as I thought. Apparently, the shock was reflected on my face, and she hurriedly intervened in the conversation with a request to think about her proposal. Trying to keep my composure, I gathered all my strength and took a deep breath, suppressing the inner turmoil that threatened to overwhelm me. With a determined effort, I managed to nod, carefully keeping a poker face on my face. "I'll take some time to think," I replied. There was tension in my voice. I must explain that I do not condemn, but I have never considered the possibility of an open marriage for myself. I respect a person's freedom to live as they please. Although I understand the appeal of new experiences and the excitement they cause, the concept of an open marriage does not correspond to my beliefs. I have always viewed marriage as a deeply intimate and personal relationship, as something deeply personal to me. I imagined a life in which only my wife and I would look at the world together, without the presence of an ever-changing society. This was not what I agreed to when I made my vows. But I sat in front of my wife, a life partner for 21 years, and admitted that I was ready to consider this option. Admittedly, such frankness alerted me, but I needed time to sort out my emotions and understand the situation. Perhaps I was hoping that this was just a temporary stage, a small obstacle that we could overcome. Despite this, I could not hide from myself the truth that was deep inside me. I was just deceiving myself. In the days that followed, I plunged into deep introspection. I was thinking about our marriage, about the promises we made to each other, about the life we painstakingly built side by side. I was thinking about the consequences of the proposed changes not only for us, but also for the legacy we wanted to leave behind, for the cherished house that belonged to my father. The thought of sharing my wife with another man haunted me, causing complex emotions and deep insecurity. A sickening fear seized me at the very thought of it. My every being rebelled against this idea, making it clear that it wasn't just that I was old-fashioned or adhered to traditional norms. The matter is much deeper. It touches the essence of my values and beliefs. Intuitively, I understood this truth in the depths of my being. The concept of open marriages simply did not correspond to my personal values. I couldn't imagine sharing a woman I deeply loved, and I couldn't play along with this state of affairs. Therefore, I made a decision that seemed logical to me in the circumstances. I turned to my close friend Frank, who turned out to be an excellent divorce lawyer. It may seem unusual to someone that being a lawyer myself, I turned to another lawyer for help, but everyone has their own unique circumstances. Given Frank's experience in this field, I turned to him for advice, realizing that at that moment, I needed any qualified advice. I told Frank the details of my wife's wishes, and he listened to me carefully without interrupting. When I finished expressing my thoughts, he asked a simple and at the same time important question. What do you want to do yourself? I admitted that I was still in the process of sorting out my emotions and was not sure of my final decision. But deep down, I understood that it was important for me to be prepared for what lay ahead. Given the significance of our 21 years of life, I felt a strong desire not to make hasty decisions. At the same time, I understood the futility of inaction in anticipation of a miraculous resolution of the situation. So I started a frank conversation with Frank, trying to figure out all the possible options. I asked about the consequences that could arise if I decide to get out of this situation. Frank patiently guided me through the whole process, telling me about the likely results and possible problems that may arise in the future. The conversation with Frank turned out to be a very grim discovery, as it further confirmed the seriousness of the situation. A few days later, the moment came, an opportunity to face the truth. I chose to have a frank conversation with my wife, not because I began to accept the concept of an open marriage more, but because I came to a firm decision. I realized that I cannot and do not want to go down this path. It just didn't fit my personality or the essence of our relationship. Or maybe it was because the version of us that I had cherished for 21 years would not fit. Be the same. I waited patiently for both of us to be at home and calm down, wishing that nothing would distract or interfere with us. This conversation was of great importance, and I wanted us to have a space for his open conversation. I asked her to join me in the living room, preparing to make her proposal. I can't, I plucked up the courage to say, looking into her eyes, and met an uncomprehending expression. I saw a flash of surprise, and then it gradually dawned on her. It seemed that she had not fully considered this possibility, not thinking that I could respond with a firm refusal. When she started to gather her thoughts to answer, I raised my hand, motioning for her to pause. This does not correspond to my values. This is not the type of marriage I want, I said. And, to be honest, I don't believe that such a marriage will be useful for each of us. She was silent, her reaction expressed only in a slow nod of understanding. It was as if she carried a sense of disappointment with her, marking the beginning of our quarrel. Instead of a dramatic altercation, it all started with an icy, tense silence, which gradually turned into an unprecedented quarrel. Although I had witnessed my wife's anger before, this time it was felt especially acutely. Her words pierced like daggers, filled with resentment that I had never seen in her. I became the object of the accusation. I was accused of lack of adventurism and restraining it. She reproached me, claiming that I was too ordinary, too boring. I tried to explain to her that it's not that I'm not interesting. It is about preserving the sanctity of our union, about keeping solemn promises. But she still didn't want to understand my point of view. During our heated exchange, I lost track of time, but it seemed to me that it stretched for several hours. Our voices collided, echoing through the room, and we answered each other endlessly. It seemed that years of unspoken grievances were spilling out, flaring up in the strong flame of our differences. Having exhausted myself, I decided to retreat, realizing the need for respite and reflection. It was obvious that she needed the same thing. Without saying a word, I quickly grabbed my jacket and keys and headed for the exit. "Where are you going?" "What is it?" she asked, concern in her voice. "I'm going to the hotel," I replied firmly. "We both need some space." The trip to the hotel was a blur. The consequences of our tense dispute were spinning in my head. Faced with the harsh reality of our relationship, the next day I got behind the wheel and drove to my friend Frank, who was a divorce lawyer. We plunged into complicated details, discussing the division of property, including the house that my father generously gifted us. Unfortunately, Frank reported disappointing news. He said that since my late father had given us the house, she had every right to it. Considering the possibility of selling the house, I instructed Frank to start divorce proceedings on the basis of irreconcilable differences, using the Nevada law on divorce without fault. Returning home after meeting with Frank, I wasted no time telling my wife that I had officially filed for divorce. She stood there, completely confused, and tried to figure out the reasons for my decision, and you know perfectly well why. I replied firmly, not wanting to enter into further discussion. I was determined. I was bursting with anger at her. In a fit of irritation, I demanded that she pack her things and leave before emotions forced me to do something that I would regret later. Despite her attempts to argue and plead, promises to abandon the idea of an open marriage and promises to change, it was already too late. The damage was done, and my decision remained adamant. The destroyed trust and irreparable damage caused led to the fact that she decided to leave. Gathering her thing, she said goodbye and walked out the door. In the following days, I got used to the new daily routine. I faithfully performed my work duties, returned home, cooked my own meals, and enjoyed the tranquility of lonely evenings. I found solace in calmness, enjoying the absence of tension and the newfound freedom to live according to my principles. An intoxicating sense of freedom swept over me, prompting me to meet again with friends I had neglected and take part in social events that I had been putting off for a long time. I went on invigorating hikes, enjoyed the tranquility of camping, indulged in reading, and regularly visited the gym. As time passed, the days seemed to accelerate, gradually easing the initial pain of her departure. Gradually, the pain turned into a lingering one, dulling with time. The divorce hearing passed quickly, like a fleeting moment. We divided the house equally. Everyone got their share. When the house was sold, she received her share of the capital. Surprisingly, my wife did not express a desire to receive alimony since she earned almost as much as I did. Together, we have created a successful enterprise, 2 hairdressers, of course, with my support. After a few months of my new single life, fate intervened. I accidentally met her in a familiar cafe where we often visited together. I saw her next to a man whose name I couldn't name. It seemed that they felt at ease in each other's company, conducting a quiet dialogue while sipping coffee. The sight of an unfamiliar man caused a strange feeling in me. It wasn't envy or remorse. Perhaps it was just a jolt from the realization that she had moved forward. Or maybe it was a slight jolt to the memories of what had happened before. When I watched their communication from afar, the initial wave of emotions quickly passed. Instead, I was overcome by a sense of calmness, devoid of anger and resentment, which confirmed that I had made the right choice. It became obvious that she began her journey to the desired life, striving for freedom and self-realization. A few months later, the house was sold, and we received a significant capital of 350 zizmzer, which we divided equally. Feeling a deep sense of disappointment, I realized that I had no options left to get out of this situation. During the final procedure, I saw her next to the same man with whom she was drinking coffee, and we did not exchange a single word. It was amazing. 21 years of marriage, which in a few months turned us into strangers. But my story didn't end there. One morning, getting ready for work, I walked into my office and saw my ex-wife sitting at my desk. The surprise imprinted on my face must have been a very vivid sight. Looking closely at her, I saw tears pouring from her eyes. I asked why she came, her intentions. She admitted that the man she was dating stole money from her, and recently it turned out that she was HIV positive. She asked me for help, sobbing on her knees. I asked her what she expected from me. She asked for advice. Without hesitation, I advised her to seek help from the authorities. Unfortunately, I was not able to provide her with direct help. After this incident, I did not meet her again, and the further fate of her problem remained unknown to me. Now I find solace in my new, lonely life. Not daring to enter the sphere of dating, I am content to enjoy this period of personal independence. Thank you for watching this video. Life's twists and turns can be unexpected, but they teach us valuable lessons about ourselves and our relationships.